Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grey Market Blast. Yes, it is Tuesday, the 15th of July. How we're halfway through the month, I have no idea. How it's even July, I have no idea. But as usual, you join myself and the glamorous with a capital G goddess of grain, Angie Setzer herself, where Angie will be providing a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, and so I don't get my usual spanking, I will get the legals out the way. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the wonderful, the glamorous, the sensational Angie Setzer. Angie, my love, how are you?
Your usual spanking. Sorry, I just caught that. I'm like, excuse me. I don't think there's been but anyway, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Thunderdome. And yeah, I have no idea, how the hell it's July, let alone halfway through July. We're a month away from school starting. My mom texted me this morning. She's like, we need to do our back to school shopping trip. And I'm like, shut your mouth. Like, that's not happening. So, yeah, here we are. Happy Tuesday. Market wise here today, of course, I had a customer call me this morning and I kind of started into this diatribe on like what I was watching and what was happening and all of that. And I got to the end of it after about 3 minutes and I said, you know what, John, I said, I should have just said to you, too long didn't read version is same shit, different day.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and I could have saved you 3 or 4 minutes of your life, but here we are and you have the next 15 minutes to listen. So let's talk about, the things that we're paying attention to. I think the biggest thing right now, or, bullet point numero uno here, is the potential Russia escalation. Like
Yes.
that Financial Times article this morning, for those of you that didn't see it. And I hadn't had a chance to really dig into the whole entire thing, but obviously we saw excerpts of it. The important stuff has already been kind of spoon-fed to us. And so the talk is basically like Trump and Zelensky, or basically Trump at this point has been talking to Zelensky about, these offensive, missiles. The Patriot missiles are supposed to be coming within days, and some of these other things. And basically he was like, could you hit Moscow? And we'd kind of mentioned this. I think you'd mentioned it yesterday where it was like Moscow would come up more than once. And so he's like, can you hit St. Petersburg too? And so some of the conversation right now is that Trump is like, listen, like Putin told me during our last conversation that he wasn't going to stop. And that was basically what we had heard. Putin had said this to his country, June 20th, 24th, something like that, towards the tail end of June. He was basically like, listen, it's going to be all ours. And that's this is what we've been talking about for how long now, in the sense of like, the Putin knows that, to reach a ceasefire at this point in time, basically whatever they agree to, the land that he has at that point is going to become his. That's basically been the proposal all along.
Yeah.
And so that's why you haven't seen them let up. As a matter of fact, since, Ukraine launched that big, surprise drone attack the first part of June there, all you've seen is a continuation of more and more and more of these drones and missiles being launched by Russia. I think it's like you're up to where you're 400 to 500, drones a night plus, and all of these other things. And so Trump, is getting mad, and one of the lines in the article he said is like, I have a good conversation with Putin. I come home, I tell the first lady, and she tells me, well, yeah, great. Another city got hit. And so basically we're seeing, at this point, what should be, it could become an extreme escalation, or maybe it becomes one of those situations where Putin does decide, okay, I have grabbed enough. I am okay with this. I am going to kind of cool my jets. You know what I mean? Like if the threat is great enough.
We've already heard back. So we've heard some Moscow comments from the Kremlin, basically saying, look, they need to look into and substantiate these conversations that Trump apparently has had. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The time is quite funny because it was yesterday that we said, look, one thing to note is kind of picking up on the vibe, doing the air quotes again, is that Trump is mentioning Moscow specifically and stuff like this. And then all of a sudden we find out via the FT that he's actually almost, reading between the lines, I almost feel, I saw one commentator said that basically he's saying, can you hit Moscow? It might not be a bad idea. And if these things are true, then obviously that's quite a significant escalation. But does wheat prices care?
At this point, no. And I think partly, simply because, and we've had this conversation to a certain extent before, in 2022 when the war happened, everyone freaked out. We were going to completely remove 60 some million metric ton out of the world supply, maybe not quite 60, it might have been like closer to 55 or whatever at the time between Russia and Ukraine. We all panicked. Ukraine wasn't going to be able to export. They were going to start to hit infrastructure, yada, yada, yada. Prices shot higher. Obviously, food became a protected commodity in the whole entire thing. We're battling inflation. There was some sort of agreement behind the scenes, whether, you know what I mean? Like that we
Yeah.
weren't going to hit infrastructure. We weren't going to hit these ships in the Black Sea, this sort of thing. We saw this flow of movement. As a matter of fact, we saw an increased flow of movement at very cheap levels, the cheapest supplies in years coming out of the Black Sea. And so to a certain extent, it's kind of a fool me once sort of situation. A lot of these folks aren't really spending the day to day paying attention to how it is impacting the flow of grain until it hits them straight in the face. And so there is a potential now. You are starting to see some indications that, not only was the Russian crop potentially a bit smaller than what folks were thinking here recently over the last couple of months, you are starting to see some of these logistical hiccups that are popping up. I don't know if they're necessarily war related or what, but you're having a struggle with getting, not only the farmer selling, turning bushels into cash, but you're having a struggle with getting it to where it needs to be to export it. And so if you're a world end user who's kind of sitting here relying on these really, really cheap Russian supplies to just kind of overwhelm the market again, you might be caught sideways. And so we'll be watching. We just have to see, cash is king. And if you see a continuation of strengthening basis of, of it getting more difficult to kind of source these supplies out of that market, or just in general, if you're a grain buyer and you're sitting here wondering what the hell's going to happen in 3 to 5 months, do you buy grain out of Ukraine? Not unless it's at an extreme discount. So I think we have to be really careful that this is kind of one of those situations where, to me, the threat to movement or the threat of a significant escalation possibly impacting the flow of grain movement or whatever is probably as high, if not higher, than when we started the war initially. So
Yeah.
we'll be watching that. I think that's the biggest thing to be paying attention to. And yeah, you're right. The wheat market's like, whatever, show me. Like, it's just, I don't care. Like, you need to prove to me that I need to be worried about this because I've already, tried to catch this falling knife a million times and gotten my fingers
Yes.
cut
Yeah.
off,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's where we're at. That's really the biggest thing to be paying attention to at this point in time, is how does Putin kind of approach this? And after, the US hitting Iran, obviously I think the feeling's a little bit different. The one thing also too, we did see China kind of step in, and be like, I'm supporting Russia more. But we are seeing war games, between the US, Japan, South Korea, like all of these countries too, kind of like showing a response to what a China attack on Taiwan would look like. So geopolitically, we're just having a grand old time. Woohoo! All right, over to Tariff Chat. So, global economics, why not? We are seeing the EU holding off on any sort of response, which we figured, right? The European Union wasn't going to come in and be like, well, day 2, we're going to tariff you back because Trump's threatened not to, first off. And they say that there's progress being made, in the conversation there. Is there anything that you saw in the whole EU? Because they were meeting again, right? Or they're going to meet this evening? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so the headline out story out this morning, because obviously at first instantly we heard that they're going to stick the retaliatory tariffs on hold. But
Yes.
we heard today that they're actually formulating a plan for this retaliation, which basically it's big ticket items. So it was energy, it was agriculture, it was things like Boeing jets and stuff like that. So again, it's all very much that they're just getting the pieces in place. There's nothing to say that they're going to come up and we're all of a sudden going to get a headline say they are they're being put in place. The bottom line is they still want to negotiate, and
Yeah.
Merz, obviously the head of Germany, and Macron are still kind of suggesting that there's a lot of room between now and deadline day, as a faux deadline day, and before they can get something sorted. So there's going to be a lot of talk, a lot of headlines of what might happen after that, but all eyes on trying to get something sorted before then. But again, as we know with Trump, it's not all about deficits and whatnot anymore. A lot of it is politically motivated and who he just doesn't like. And we know that there's quite a few EU leaders that he doesn't like. So we'll see what happens there.
But I do feel like the EU leaders that he doesn't like seem to have fallen, I'm not going to say into line because that's an unfair assessment. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a fair thing to say about a world leader in any
I
way,
get what
shape,
you're
or form.
saying.
But,
I get where
like,
you're going with this. Yeah, and I
yeah.
agree. Oh,
That's,
just a side note. Just a side note. Trump is
yeah.
actually heading to the UK very soon, but not the state visit at the later on in the year. This is to play a couple of rounds of golf. So, all right for some.
I've heard it's gorgeous this time of year. I don't know.
It's fucking hot.
On the tariff side of things, we've got Japan. We're going to have another meeting with Japan's Prime Minister in Basent. Apparently at the end of the week, I've lost count. This is meeting 37 and a half. I don't know. I think it's like 10. 11, maybe. And I think you saw the administration kind of be like, wow, we're really surprised at how hard Japan's taken stance-wise. Now, it'll be interesting to see, in my opinion, what happens. They have an election on Sunday. And so is this hard
Yes.
stance more posturing ahead of the election potentially, just to kind of be like, no, I ain't nobody's bitch. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. Like
So
it's,
one thing to be
yeah,
mindful at the moment. I know it's very rare that you'd ever talk about Japanese government bonds on an agricultural show, but the 30-year Japanese government bond has been blowing out a little bit, which has had some follow through into other bond markets. So look, domestically, the reason I bring this up is domestically, there's a lot of things going on at the moment with Japan. So yeah,
yeah,
potentially, it'd be interesting to see because I believe it's the current majority in the Japanese parliament are looking like they might be voted out. So
yes.
it'd be interesting to see how this plays out domestically more than anything else, because obviously Japan, we all know what Japan's like. They're kind of very much, there's a lot of kind of honor and all this stuff that goes in what kind of their daily way of
Yes.
life. So it'd be interesting to see how things roll over post election, because we could be on a completely different footing.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a lot of it we'll be watching. And I think the biggest thing to point out in that with Japan's domestic woes is that they're very unlikely, even if the US does put tariffs on their products, I highly doubt they're going to tariff food imports, corn,
No.
wheat, any of that, simply because one of the biggest things that they are struggling with is food inflation. So just kind of important to
Yes.
think about there. Quiet elsewhere, there's talk of all these deals, and then we just don't get any. I feel gaslit. Basent and others kind of at this point to me seem a little bit more focused on the Fed, and the conversation about the Fed. So that is of interest as well, just simply because we're seeing the cost of our debt spiral. And if we do see interest rates cut too soon and some of these other things, do we see the conversation about inflation return to commodities? Potentially. Lastly, looking at grain conditions, production, and weather, you are seeing just a continuation of relatively benign weather. There is talk of more in the way of some above normal temperatures possibly building in. It looks like the Euro AI is trying to really build some heat in here at the start of August. So we'll be waiting to see if that sort of shows up. But at this point, you're going to be hard pressed to convince anyone that production is lower than trend, if not lower than record, which actually trend at this point is record. So kind of same old. Just simply because we have some of the best conditions that we've seen crop condition wise from the USDA. Highest that we've seen, over the last 10 years or whatever, just a really solid looking crop. Everything's green and lush and it's gotten all of the rain that it needs, if not a little too much in a lot of places. There are some pockets of dryness here in Michigan. Over on the west side of the state, we have some issues. Saw Michigan crop conditions drop off. Not that we matter, but that, is something there that we're paying attention to. I am going to be having a webinar with Lance, from NAS and, Seth Myers from the World Ag Outlook Board on Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. We're going to have a
Get it in
conversation
your
about,
diary. Get it in your
right? Put it
diary.
down. We are going to have a conversation about crop conditions. We've talked about this with Lance a few times before, and there's kind of this sort of argument amongst analysts in the industry about the influence or if there's some sort of, a level of, hey, can I look at these crop conditions and does it translate directly into yield? I've asked it a few times in the past and Lance has always kind of cautioned on it. But I feel like we can refine our questions a bit better and probably, get us some more insight, into what to expect ahead of the August
Just
WASDE number. Yeah.
Just quickly on that, you haven't posted about that yet, have you? Because I'm
No,
searching
no, I
desperately.
have not
Oh, thank
launched
God
it
for that.
yet. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
desperately searching on your Twitter feed right now. I'm like, I can't find it. I can't find it.
No, I have to put that together. This morning I've been a little busy. We're going to do a Brazil webinar. I love you too, babe. Sorry, Colton just woke up and came in to tell
Morning,
me he
Colton.
loves me. Morning, bud. I haven't posted it yet. We're going to do a webinar, a Brazilian webinar tomorrow morning with Eduardo, Carl and I and Nick. We're going to start with that tomorrow morning. I'll be
Awesome.
posting that. And then we're doing the USDA one on Thursday afternoon just to try to,
Busy.
provide, a little insight into what's going on, or at least, maybe some boots on the ground sort of thoughts there. But there are some rumors of pollination problems. I'm going to
Do you know
take
what? I'm
those.
so
Go
glad you brought
ahead.
this up, because
Yeah.
obviously I'm still a massive tourist on all this, and I've just seen like a lot of people talk about pollination. I'm like, okay, I have
Yes.
no idea what this is. But then it kind of turns into a bit of a meme within a space of about 6 hours.
And that's basically it. Yeah, that's basically one of those things where you're kind of like, you just have to be careful because sometimes the same picture can circulate a bajillion times, but, there are, if you talk to a lot of farmers out there and growers in different parts of the country, not Iowa, most everyone in Iowa right now is like, this crop's phenomenal. Don't ask me any more questions. I don't want to jinx it. I think you hear the same thing out of a lot of growers in like Nebraska. The Western Corn Belt right now, went into the year perfect. They went into the year exceptionally dry, which provided them the ability to get the crop planted early. It got established well, and now they're getting rain. And so there's a lot of growers in the Western Corn Belt that are just very quietly super pumped, about their potential. And then there's growers in the Eastern Corn Belt that are just like, please don't ask me, I might cry. And so we'll see, what all, and there's others that are like, it's super great, but, we'll see kind of how this moves forward. I do feel like, there's a certain science or a certain weighted level of things that we have to be paying attention to. This sometimes catches us off guard. When you look at and focus maybe a little bit too much on Iowa, but at the same time, Iowa does look great. And so over the next few weeks, we'll be paying more attention to just, what does pollination look like? What is the crop looking like as it comes to maturity? But we do have a long way to go. And so some folks are like pump the brakes on, kind of raising these yield levels. But at the same time, whatever, the market's probably going to work to price in a 184, 185. Or it's working on that at this point. And so I guess you have to prove it, that it'll be different here as we move forward. So beyond that, not much, just paying attention to world weather. We'll be paying attention to, just grain movement in general. If China comes in and starts buying anything on the U.S. bean side, which no one's really, expecting in a major way at this point, with the tariffs still in place. And yeah, so mostly just geopolitical stuff. As the market opens here at 9:30, beans are working up, about a penny. They're up a penny, which isn't bad. December corn tried to trade lower here, this morning. It did a key reversal or a semi-key reversal yesterday. So a lot of folks were excited about that. And of course we opened much lower. We're now working to claw ourselves back about 4 cents off the low. So we'll see what the day brings. Giddy up.
Awesome. Angie, thank you as always. You are absolutely marvelous. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Whatever you're doing today, stay safe, keep it tight. And yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.